To order. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let the record show that all the council members are here. Mayor Engen is absent tonight, meeting conflict, so I'm chairing. We have minutes to approve from October 17th. Are there any corrections to those minutes, Ms. Cares?
Hello. On page 15 at the bottom, it currently states an inaccurate species name. Right now it says Alderwoman Cares blah, 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 Bob White Virginia quail, and that should read Bob White Colonist Virginianus quail. And so I've sent an email with that correction to the clerk's office. I think I was just garbling it just like I did now, and so hopefully we can get that correct on the record.
Your pronunciation was wonderful. Are there any other corrections or changes to the minutes? Does anyone object to adopting them as amended? Seeing none, those minutes are adopted as amended by Ms. Cares. Is there any public comment on items not on the agenda? If so, come up to the mic, say your name, and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Oh, sorry. Let's go ahead and do this, and then we'll do committee meetings yeah. We'll do committee meetings, and then we'll have you back. Okay. Sorry. Well, we're off to a rollicking good start tonight. Thank you for keeping me in line. Now, let's schedule the committee meetings for the weeks of October 24th and October 31st.
Well, the good news is next Monday you get a rest, so hopefully things will go better in 2 weeks. So the City Council is not meeting next week Monday. It's the 5th Monday of the month, and the Council meets the first 4 Mondays. So we're setting up committee meetings for the next 2 weeks instead of 1. The Public Safety and Health Committee will meet this Wednesday, the 26th of October from 11 until noon. Public Works will follow from 1 o'clock to 1:25. There's another City Council meeting this week. The City Council is going to meet jointly with the County Commissioners in order to conduct a public hearing on an open space bond purchase. That meeting is going to be held over at 200 West Broadway. That's in the courthouse building in room 151. And that is the Commissioner's new meeting room. That meeting will go from 1:30 to 2:25. The Administration and Finance Committee will meet from 2:30 to 3:10. Committee of the Whole meets from 3:15 to 3:45. And then the following Wednesday, that's the 2nd of November, the Public Safety and Health Committee will meet from 9:45 in the morning to 9:55. The Public Works Committee will meet from 10 a.m. to 10:40. And the Administration and Finance Committee will follow from 10:45 to 11:45. All those meetings, with the exception of the second City Council meeting this week, are going to be held right here in the City Council chambers at 140 West Pine. Thanks.
Thanks. Any committee chairs have any clarifications? Mr. Wilkins?
I just want to say that Public Safety and Health is going to have suicide prevention awareness training, so if anybody out there wants to participate, come on down at 11 in the morning, Wednesday.
Thanks. Any other? Okay, that will be the committee schedule for the next 2 weeks. Now, would anybody like to make public comment on any item that's not on the agenda?
My name is Bob Moore. I attended the last MRA meeting. Things that go on at the MRA meeting just never fails to amaze me. One of the things they approved last time was the over $500,000 to the Woodbury Corporation. Founded in 1919, privately held Woodbury Corporation is one of the oldest and most respected full-service real estate development and management companies in the Intermountain West, headquartered in Salt Lake City. Woodbury Corporation owns and manages over 13 million square feet of retail, industrial, hotel, residential, and office buildings across 12 states. Yet the taxpayers of Missoula are required to pay about $1.8 million for the crossing, and now another over half a million, so that they can buy some land to build Les Schwab's tire shop. Here's one of the criteria required by the governing bodies of the MRA, which I'm going to ask the city attorney to look at and see if the MRA is following their own guidelines. Project financing. Types of financing available to the applicant. Lender participation commitments, industrial developments, revenue bonds, and state and federal grant monies, for example, are examined to assess the need for TIF assistance. Very clearly, that states that unless they need it, they don't get it. Woodbury, I read it, I don't see their numbers. I know they own and manage over 13 million square feet. I'll bet you $10,000 that they don't need it. I'll bet you. Another thing they talked about was the ratio of the 1 to 10, private-public. There was all kinds of shenanigans, I call it shenanigans, in trying to make sure they could get within the 1 to 10 ratio. Buchanan was even concerned about the board might put her or put the MRA into a thing where they had to have exactly 1 to 10. But let me read you this. The chairman, England, replied that he always understood that the 1 to 10 is a guideline and the board should shoot for it when they can. Criteria for review. Applicants will be evaluated on the following 14 criteria. Relationship of public and private. Relationship of private investment to public of a project shall be significant enough to ensure prudent investment of public funds.
Mr. Moore, you're a little over 3 minutes.
Okay, well, 10 seconds. Of public investment in no more than $1 for every $10 of private funds may be considered a responsible use of public funds. I think that clearly states to anybody's thinking that if it doesn't meet the 1 to 10, anything you spend over there is a waste of public funds, which is what the MRA and the city council and the mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Moore, you're over time.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have any public comment on items not on the agenda tonight? Okay, then we'll move on to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda were approved in city council committees by a unanimous vote. We save time at council meetings by voting on these items as a package. The city clerk will read the list aloud so citizens watching on MCAT will know what is on the consent agenda. We'll invite community comment on these items before we vote. Ms. Rabine?
Thanks. Tonight's consent agenda has six items. And the first, as always, is to approve claims. Claims are the city's accounts payable in the amount of $1,545,553.18 for checks that are dated tomorrow, October 25th, 2016. Number two is to approve claims related to the water acquisition in the amount of $62,153.01 for checks that are dated October 25th, 2016. That's also tomorrow. Number three is to adopt a resolution of intention to annex and incorporate within the boundaries of the city of Missoula, Montana, a certain parcel of land described as Tract A of Certificate of Survey number 6082, and zone the properties C2-4 Community Commercial in the city, and approve an annexation development agreement between the city of Missoula and Costco Wholesale, all located in the southwest quarter of Section 6 and 7, Township 13 North, Range 19 West, Principal Meridian, Montana, and set a public hearing on November 14th, 2016. There's a second part to that one, and it is to set a public hearing again on November 14th, 2016, on a resolution establishing an infrastructure rebate program for Costco Wholesale for off-site construction of Mary Jane Boulevard across Tract 1 of Certificate of Survey number 6071 and Tract 1 of Certificate of Survey number 5527, generally described as from West Broadway, Highway 50, to the intersection of Mary Jane Boulevard and Camden Street. Number 4 is to set a public hearing on November 7th, 2016 on a resolution amending annual appropriations for the city of Missoula, Montana as set forth in fiscal year 2017 budget that increases the total city budget by $28,165 in order to reclassify a position to a Planner 2 floodplain administrator and to employ a Planner 1 position. Number 5 is to set a joint Missoula City County, Missoula County, Missoula City Council, that would be County Commissioners, City Council public hearing on November 16th, 2016 on a resolution to expend up to $75,000 of the city's portion of the 2006 open space bond proceeds towards the purchase of a conservation easement on the Isbell property, which is 75 acres of working farm and ranch land in the Grass Valley area of Missoula. And finally, number 6 is to approve and authorize the mayor to sign a contract with Montana Department of Transportation, affectionately known as the MDT, accepting Federal Transit Administration Section 5303 funds in the amount of $168,206 to conduct transportation planning activities in the Missoula Metropolitan Planning Organization area as described in the Unified Planning Work Program.
Okay. Does City Council have any, actually first, is there any public comment on items on the consent agenda? Okay, City Council comments, questions? Mr. DeBari?
This is from Marty. On item number 3, it might be useful to check that legal description because I don't believe anything can exist simultaneously in the southwest quarter of section 6 and 7. I think that it would be disjunct. So if you just check the legal description and make sure that that's right before everything's finalized. Thanks.
Seems to make some sense. I'll talk to our planner who's drafting that stuff. Thanks.
Do we need to clarify that before we vote on it, or will our comments now reflect?
I think your comments will be sufficient, and we'll correct it before we advertise the hearing and for the next placement on your next agenda.
Because there's still a public hearing coming.
Yes, okay. Yes.
Great. Thank you, Mr. DeBari, for catching that. Mr. Wells?
Could you divide the question number 2, please?
Yes. Okay, I think we're ready to vote. All in favor of items, all the items on the consent agenda except for 2. Roll call vote. On the consent agenda items 1 and 3 through 6, Armstrong votes yes. Bentley votes yes. Cares votes yes. DeBari votes yes. Hedall votes yes. Hess votes yes. Jones votes yes. Marler votes yes. Van Lossberg votes yes. Wells votes yes. West votes yes. And Wilkins votes yes. Would anybody like to change your vote? That is 12 ayes. And now we'll vote on item 2, claims related to water. On consent agenda item number 2, Bentley votes yes. Cares votes yes. DeBari votes yes. Hedall votes yes.
Hess votes yes. Jones votes yes. Marlar votes yes. Von Lossberg votes yes. Wells votes no. West votes yes. Wilkins votes yes. And Armstrong votes yes. Would any of you like to change your vote? That is 11 ayes and 1 nay.
All right, now it's time for comments from city staff, agencies, boards, commissions, authorities, and the community forum, and we have a few. First up, we have University District Neighborhood Council report from Katie Sullivan. Thank you for coming, Ms. Sullivan.
Thank you.
And that microphone is always on.
Great. Sounds good. Okay, my name is Katie Sullivan. I'm from the University District Neighborhood Council. I'm here to give you a brief overview of what's going on in our neighborhood and our general meeting we just had, and I'll make it fast. Gwen Jones came and discussed the potential zoning and design standards that could happen in the university neighborhood. She got volunteers to participate in a working group, and people in the neighborhood seemed very interested in this and want to discuss further, so we'll probably have more meetings on this issue. We had leadership team elections, and we have a new member. His name's Tony LaPlante, so we're glad to have him. Tyler Decker of Parks and Recreation came and discussed the timeline and plans for the renovation of Jeanette Rankin Park, and we will be doing a lot of spring planting work and getting volunteers from our neighborhood. Next, we did a priority setting activity to learn what the issues are in our neighborhood currently. We have a nice long list, and we're going to get the results posted onto the website, and hopefully we can take those and work on them from there. And then finally, we had Gwen Jones, Emily Bentley, and John Wilkins come and do Q&A with our neighbors and talk about the issues that are important for them for the next year. And that's all I've got.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we have the Bicycle Ambassadors update from Caitlin Lewis and Julia Schechter.
Great. We're going to kind of tag team this and switch off. But first of all, thanks for having us. I just wanted to talk about the importance of cycling in the community, as well as what we did this summer as bicycle ambassadors for the city.
Can I ask you guys to identify yourself, because two of you will be speaking, and the minute taker would like to say who is who by your voice, so that would be helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely. So my name is Caitlin Lewis. Julia Schechter.
Great, thanks, guys.
Yeah. So I won't preach at you too much about cycling, but cycling's been in Missoula's history for a long time, even since 1892, when bicycle infantry left Fort Missoula to cross America. And it's in our present now, when we talk about bicycle infrastructure, it's obvious that bikes are here to stay in Missoula. There's multiple businesses and nonprofits that advocate for adventure, cycling, healthy living, and social justice through bicycling. And so what we wanted to do this summer as bicycle ambassadors is to ensure a good future for bicycling. And so we did that through teaching people how to ride safely, courteously, and legally, or we tried to the best we could. We interacted with about 750 children in Missoula this summer and 1,900 adults and teenagers. So that's quite a few people that we got to talk to. We were talking to people every single day. And when we talked to them, we advocated the benefits of bicycling, as well as helped them get familiar and comfortable with riding a bike so that they were safer on the roads and more confident cyclists. And overall, we worked with citizens to make the community better for individuals as well as the community as a whole.
So on in an individual level, cycling has many benefits. That includes fitness and cost savings, just to name a few. But it also increases your overall health, your memory, your stress, and reduces stress and your overall mood. So a few events that we had this summer highlighted these benefits of cycling. We helped organize Walk and Roll Missoula, in which we helped to reward daily commuters and encourage new people to try out healthy transportation. We also attended the Back to School Bash in coordination with Let's Move Missoula, and we reached out to low-income families at the beginning of the school year. And here we discussed safe routes to school with families to encourage active transportation, because it's been shown that kids who bike and walk to school are overall better students. We also led 2-week-long camps with Parks and Recreation. They're called Bike in the Parks. And we gave kids the skills to become successful cyclists as children and as adults. And we also helped introduce them to the benefits of cycling and the freedom that you experience on a bike that gives you benefits to your health and your mood.
So a huge part of our ambassadorship is talking about safety. We do this at all these activities. It's from fitting helmets to leading group rides and showing people, like I said, how to be confident riders, because we believe that confident cyclists equate to safer cyclists on the road. And we did this in multiple different ways. We did everything from like going to staff meetings. One example is we went to Homeward staff meeting, and they're already environmentally friendly people. And so just showing them how to ride and incorporate cycling into their everyday commute, and doing that in the most legal way. We went to group homes. We went to a youth home and had a conversation about riding safely, and then we actually went out on the road and rode with them, and they got to, show hand signals and do all the proper etiquette of biking. And so that was a really fun opportunity to bike around with some teenagers. And then we would stand outside downtown or on the sidewalk and just talk to people about cycling. And one place we really noticed this made an impact was outside of Imagination Brewery. And there's a lot of sidewalk riders because Broadway is a very busy street. And so we had the pleasure of stopping a lot of people and talking to them about the safety hazards of sidewalk riding. And we just had a lot of conversations about taking safety into your own hands and how best to do that.
So in addition to helping our community on a personal and individual level, we did as much as we could to improve bicycling for our community at large. We advocated for healthy, happy, safe cycling, which makes a better community. We led 6 group rides for bicycle riders this summer, which brought people together. And for example, Bike-a-Palooza was in July, and there were over 230 participants in this ride, which showed beginner cyclists how to ride safely and confidently in a group setting. We also worked a lot with Free Cycles. Free Cycles gives away 2,000 bikes a year to members of our community, and we helped fit these people with the proper techniques and safety to get them out on the road.
So just when talking about the community, there's a lot of different groups within our community, and one that we got to interact with that I feel was a beautiful opportunity was people that only use bikes as their main source of transportation. And we had the opportunity to teach a class at the Poverello Center. So we volunteered there and then taught a class and had that interaction with that low-income culture that was really powerful, and got to have those conversations with them. And I think that was good.
So Missoula has a great biking culture here, and we should take pride in that because it promotes tourism, growth, and innovation. There are a couple things we did this summer that highlight those things. We participated in the Montana Bicycle Celebration in July, which celebrated the new trail that's connecting different communities, and that was celebrated by cyclists all over the world. We also conducted surveys at the Missoula Public Library just in the past few weeks, and we were trying to figure out how people get to the library to improve the facilities there, and we found out that while 50% of people drive to the library, 25% of people bike, 15% walk, and 10% take the bus. So people definitely use alternative transportation in Missoula, and they desire the infrastructure to support it.
So in conclusion, through our ambassadorship, we taught Missoulians how to make their community a better place through safe, courteous, and legal riding. We had the great opportunity to show people how amazing their community already is and what possibilities it has in the future. So.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And we'll be taking any questions if there are any.
Thanks, you guys. council have any questions? Thanks. I appreciate your work. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think we have one more presentation, and that is Mr. Jeff Stevens telling us about the South 39th Street Neighborhood Council.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Stevens. I live at 123 Saranac Drive, and I'm here this evening to report on our latest general meeting for the South 39th Street Neighborhood Council, which took place on September 28th of this year. We had a number of presentations. One was by Mark Thane, Superintendent of Public Schools, who gave a presentation on Cold Spring School and discussed all the upcoming changes. And I would note that a vote will be on the November ballot on whether or not to approve the relocation of Cold Spring School, so that's an important issue. There was also public comment on some non-agenda items. Wayne Gravatt spoke about the construction on South 39th and Hillview Way, which, by the way, is getting pretty close to being wrapped up for the season. It's looking pretty darn good. Paul Kielzer spoke about urban deer, which is a perpetual problem in our neighborhood. It was generally agreed that they're probably at or near an all-time high in terms of population in our neighborhood right now. Tom Zavitz of Development Services gave a presentation on tourist homes and possible changes to Title 20 involving registration. And I gave a report on Honeysuckle Park redevelopment progress. We've been working with the Parks Department for some time trying to update that park and get an irrigation system into it. And it also includes seeding, trees, and playground updates. And we just recently got a cost estimates from the Parks Department outlining various costs involved. And we have a committee that will be meeting with the Parks Department in the next several months, working out some sort of a timeline, hopefully, for getting these improvements implemented sometime in the near to distant future. Luke Robinson, who's on our leadership team, made a presentation on the Department of Urban Forestry Tree Committee and the progress that has been being made in that area. Annalise Headall gave an update on the Hillview Crossing subdivision. And in our one action item for the evening, I presented a request for a large neighborhood projects grant for artwork for a traffic signal box in the neighborhood, and there was a vote of 13-2 in favor of the neighborhood supporting the grant application. We also had leadership team elections. We have a new member of the leadership team. Paul Kielzer was nominated for the leadership team, and he was voted to the leadership team by acclamation. And that's all I've got. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. And now it's time for our public hearing. We have one tonight. State law and city council rules set guidelines for inviting community comment in a formal way on certain issues. Following a staff report on each item, the city council and the mayor invite community comment. The city council normally votes on the same night as the public hearing unless one council member requests that it be returned to a city council committee for further consideration. And tonight, our staff report on a rezoning issue is from Mary McRae.
For the record, Mary McRae with Development Services. This is a City Council initiated request on behalf of the owner, Montana Department of Natural Resources and Conservation, DNRC, to rezone the property located at 905 Reserve Street from SD2 to B22. On June 27th, the City Council approved a motion authorizing staff to begin the process for a City Council initiated rezoning of the site from City Special District Number 2 to B22 Community Business. City Council expressed interest in rezoning this parcel in order to better accommodate commercial uses and incorporate Title 20 general standards such as landscaping, buffering, screening, parking, and the commercial design standards. The property is located in the southwest corner of Reserve Street and South 7th Street West in the Two Rivers Neighborhood Council area. The site is outlined in yellow on this slide. Reserve Street is classified as a principal arterial and as Highway 93. South 7th Street West is classified as a major collector street. In the next couple of slides, I will cover the growth policy and comprehensive planned land use recommendations. The 1995 Reserve Street Area Plan Update recommended the land use designations shown on this slide. Special District Commercial Corridor designation is along both sides of Reserve Street. Residential 8 dwelling units per acre and residential 12 to 16 dwelling units per acre is for the land east of the Reserve Street Commercial Corridor, and residential 4 dwelling units per acre for the land west of the Reserve Street Commercial Corridor. The 1995 plan was adopted in the context of city annexations of land along the Reserve Street Corridor from 1990 to 1994, and the widening and reconstruction of Reserve Street. The 1995 plan recommended that zoning be adopted that would guide the predicted transition to more commercial development along the Reserve Street Corridor and denser residential development in the adjacent neighborhoods. The 1995 plan suggested that both large and small commercial businesses are necessary to the economic health of our community, and well-designed neighborhood commercial services are important to residential areas. The 1995 plan anticipated that the adopted zoning would be reviewed and revised as necessary as problems emerged. 20 years later, after a lengthy public process, the City Council adopted the 2035 Our Missoula City Growth Policy in 2015. This slide is a map that shows the recommended land use designations from the 2035 growth policy for this area. The community mixed-use land use designation is recommended for the subject property and for land along both sides of the Reserve Street corridor. The growth policy describes community mixed use as an area that includes a broad range of functions such as retail, education, financial institutions, professional and personal services, offices, residences, and general service activities. Community mixed-use areas are placed in proximity to major streets and intersections where vehicle, pedestrian, bicycle, and transit facilities are provided. The 2035 growth policy encourages development in the urban fringe that provides a wider variety of housing types with access to convenient local commercial services and context-appropriate solutions when new development occurs. The updated land use designations of the 2035 growth policy continue the 1995 plan's prediction of a transition to more commercial development along the Reserve Street corridor and denser residential development in the adjacent neighborhoods. Now I'd like to cover the zoning. This slide shows the current zoning map with a mix of city and county zoning districts. The subject property is highlighted in red and is 1.90 acres in size, just under the size of a typical city block. The subject property and land to the north, east, and south is zoned City SD2, which was adopted in 1995 following annexation of the land into the city. Prior to annexation, the property was zoned County SD2. The City SD2 standards were adapted from the prior County SD2 zoning. The City SD2 standards reference Title 19 City Zoning Regulations, which were replaced in 2009 with Title 20. As City Council adopts new regulations into Title 20, they do not apply to land zoned City SD2 because it was adopted under the Title 19 regulations. The B22 Community Business Zoning District allows a mix of low to moderate intensity commercial uses. The Title 20 general standards, such as parking, landscaping, buffering, screening, and the commercial design standards would apply to development on this site. Property to the west is zoned County ZD10, which was adopted in 1958 and amended in 1973. County ZD10 does not include parcel and building standards, such as maximum height restrictions, building setback standards, or density standards, and it permits single-dwelling residential and accessory uses. This slide shows photos of the subject property. The top left photo is from the southwest corner of the property looking north along the west property line. The top right photo is from the southwest corner looking across the site to the northeast. The bottom left photo is from the southwest corner looking east along the ditch at the south property line. And the bottom right photo is from the southeast corner of the property looking north along Reserve Street. This slide shows photos of the surrounding area. The top left photo is the residential property adjacent to the west on South 7th Street West. The upper right photo is the medical office use to the north. The lower right photo is Benson Farms across Reserve Street to the northeast, and the lower right photo is the property to the east across Reserve Street that has a duplex. The property to the south is vacant land. In the next few slides, I'll summarize the differences and similarities between the B22 and SD2 zoning standards. The SD2 is a performance-based system for evaluating compliance with the standards. Single dwellings, duplexes, and residential accessory uses are the only uses permitted outright. For commercial uses, a project is required to meet the relevant absolute standards, and then, depending on the commercial use, the applicant chooses from a list of relative standards to achieve the required number of points. Commercial uses are reviewed as conditional uses or special uses, and conditional uses are approved administratively, and special uses require review and approval by the Board of Adjustment. The B22 is a standard Title 20 zoning district where a wide variety of low to moderate intensity commercial uses are permitted outright. Because it is a standard zoning district in Title 20, the rezone to B22 can't be conditioned. In addition, there are conditional uses such as artisan industrial that require conditional use and a public hearing at City Council. The permitted and conditional uses in the B22 zoning district are comparable to the intensity of uses allowed in SD2. However, the B22 zoning includes a greater number of permitted commercial uses than the SD2. Both SD2 and B22 are similar in that they both prohibit auto-related uses. SD2 prohibits all industrial uses. B22 prohibits most industrial uses. However, a few are listed as conditional uses. Drive-through restaurants are prohibited in the SD2, and B22 permits drive-through facilities subject to meeting zoning and engineering design standards. The 2035 growth policy specifies C14, C24, and M1R-2 zoning districts for lands with the community mixed-use designation. These zoning districts permit higher intensity commercial and industrial uses than are permitted in the B22 zoning district. Considering the adjacent residential to the west, the low to moderate intensity commercial uses of the B22 zoning district are a context-appropriate solution to provide conveniently located commercial development. This slide illustrates a typical commercial building layout with the setbacks required in SD2. From Reserve Street, the building setback for residential uses is 100 feet, and for commercial uses, the setback is 45 feet. From South 7th Street West, the building setback is 25 feet. A side yard setback equal to 1/3 the height of the building is required from the south and west property lines. In SD2, there are no design standards for commercial buildings that would require the parking lot to be located behind the building. The maximum building height is 30 feet. Often, the parking lots are located between the street and the building, as illustrated on this slide. And for this site, that would place the commercial buildings closer to the residential adjacent to the west. This slide illustrates a commercial building layout meeting the B22 setbacks and commercial design standards of Title 20. In the B22 zoning district, there are no setbacks unless the property abuts an R-zone district. This site does not abut an R-zone. However, the property adjacent to the west is zoned County ZD10, which is essentially a single dwelling residential zoning district. As applied to the site, the building setback from the South 7th Street West property line must match the actual setback of the building that exists adjacent to the west and fronting South 7th Street West. When you apply the commercial design standards of Title 20, commercial buildings are required to hold the corner and the building placed at or close to the front and street side property lines. As applied to this site, the building would need to be at or close to the setback line along the South 7th Street West frontage and at or close to the Reserve Street property line. This required building orientation places the parking lot behind or to the side of the building. The recently approved commercial design standards ensure that commercial buildings are oriented to face public and private streets, visual impacts of parking lots are minimized, and building facades feature some level of architectural detail. The maximum building height in the B22 is 50 feet, except at the west property line, the maximum building height is 35 feet due to the adjacent residential development. Now I'd like to discuss the landscaping and buffering standards in SD2 compared to the Title 20 landscaping, which would apply if the property is zoned B22. SD2 requires 25 feet of landscaping along the street frontages. Title 20 landscaping requires 10 feet of street frontage landscaping as part of the general landscaping requirement that 15% of the parcel must be landscaped. The SD2 absolute landscaping standards are less specific than the Title 20 standards. Also, the SD2 relative landscaping standards, such as buffering between commercial and residential uses, are encouraged but not required. Next, I would like to discuss compliance with the zoning amendment review criteria. These criteria address whether the proposed zoning amendment is in accordance with the growth policy, facilitates the provision of motorized and non-motorized transportation and other public infrastructure like water and sewer, provides or promotes compatible urban growth, promotes public health and safety, and considers the character of the district. The rezoning complies with the community mixed-use land use designation in the 2035 Missoula City Growth Policy by providing a broader range of commercial uses than permitted in SD2 at an intensity that is a context-appropriate solution in consideration of the adjacent single-dwelling residential west of the subject property. The rezoning to B22 community business will better implement the 1995 plan goal of guiding a predicted transition to more commercial development along the Reserve Street corridor because the B22 accommodates a greater variety of commercial uses compared to SD2 zoning. The rezone to B22 promotes compatible urban growth and facilitates the provision of motorized and non-motorized transportation systems through application of the Title 20 commercial design standards that require structures to be located closer to the streets. Locating commercial structures closer to the streets facilitates access to the building entrances from the public sidewalks without crossing the parking lots. In addition, the commercial structures are located farther from the residential development to the west. The rezoning is suitable for the subject property and gives reasonable consideration to the character of the district because the permitted commercial uses are low to moderate intensity. The commercial design standards place the commercial structures farther away from the adjacent residential, and the landscaping standards provide buffering between the commercial and adjacent residential. Planning Board held a public hearing on October 4th, 2016, and with 7 members present, voted unanimously to recommend approval of the rezoning request. The Planning Board recommendation on SIRE includes a summary of the discussion. Planning Board encouraged City Council to move quickly on a project to replace the SD2 zoning with appropriate Title 20 zoning districts. In conclusion, Planning Board and staff recommend approval of the rezoning of the property located at 905 Reserve Street from City Special District 2 to B22 Community Business based on the findings of fact in the staff report. At the Land Use and Planning Committee meeting of October 19th, there was a question regarding the width of Reserve Street right-of-way at this location, and the answer is the right-of-way is 120 feet width. So that concludes my staff report. Liz Mullins with DNRC is here with a short presentation.
Thank you. Ms. Mullen?
Members of the City Council, my name is Liz Mullins, and I'm a land use planner with Montana Department of Natural Resources and Conservation, DNRC. I will be presenting a summary of state school trust lands, a history of the Reserve Street property, and the current proposal awarded to Hunter Bay Coffee. When Montana became a state in 1889, Montana received 5 million acres of land from Congress. This is typically every section 16 and 36 in every township and range throughout the state, which is shown on this map. It creates a checkerboard-like pattern shown in all the blue trust lands throughout the state. These properties were granted in trust for the sole purpose of generating revenue for public schools. Today, through activities such as forestry, farming, and grazing, commercial leasing, Montana trust lands produce millions of dollars annually for K through 12th grade education. This property on 7th and Reserve was acquired from Montana Department of Transportation through a land exchange in 1999. This aerial is somewhat outdated, but it gives you an idea of the land. For instance, to the south, it is showing a single-family home. That is actually where the children's dentist office is located on Reserve. Kitty Corner is Benson's farm. To the north, there's a surgery-type office. So there's a lot of office buildings and single-family homes in this area. Lot A is approximately 2 acres in size on the corner of 7th and Reserve, and Lot B is approximately 1 acre in size. The two lots are separated by the Missoula irrigation ditch. An approach was granted by MDT off of Reserve onto Lot B. So the access would connect to Lot A by an irrigation ditch crossing. Through the request for proposals process, DNRC selected the Hunter Bay proposal for a building approximately 20,000 square feet in size for a coffee roasting facility with a coffee sandwich shop and 4 retail units on Lot A. This site plan, I'll note that this site plan does show the approach on Lot A. However, throughout the process, it will be revised to show that approach to the south on Lot B. This proposal is very promising, however, does not meet the current zoning of SD number 2, due to the roasting artisan industrial use. However, this use would be allowed under the B22 zoning. The roasting use would then be a conditional use under the B22 and not allowed to be greater than 3,500 square feet of the building. So that too would also be revised on this site plan. Upon zoning and other permitting, this lease would be eligible for up to 99 years. It would generate $26,480 annually with a 2% escalator for 15 years, and then the land would be reappraised. In conclusion, I'd like to just emphasize that this project would benefit Montana schools, long-term leasing. It would promote local businesses and create jobs. We're excited for this opportunity to collaborate with the city, and myself and Jess Hogue from the Real Estate Management Bureau, we are here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Millens. I'll open the public hearing now. Is there any public hearing? Come on up. Or is there any public hearing? Thank you. Is there any public comment? Please say your name for the record.
My name is Steve Kosky, 1020 South Reserve Street. My wife Amy and I own property at 1020, 1030, and Lot 6 of the Giese Edition. These parcels are almost directly across the street from 905 and comprise the whole block on Reserve Street between 8th and 9th Streets. We favor this rezone proposal, but we have concerns about the rezone process and spot zoning. We agree 905 needs rezoning, but so does the whole SD2 corridor. The reasons are written in your own planning documents and also in verbal staff testimony during the October 4th Planning Committee meeting. Written planning comments such as, the SD2 zoning district is restrictive in a way that stifles good development. SD2 is restrictive and contrary to current commercial development standards and zoning standards. Perhaps this project will highlight the deficiencies of SD2 and lead to a future initiative for council to look at replacing current zoning, providing more modern and functional standards. SD2 requires large setbacks from streets, 45 feet from Reserve Street and 25 feet from other streets. Amy and I know about these setbacks. We bought 2 of the 3 properties in 1993 from the folks who built the home in 1953. 1020 was the first conversion of a single-family residence to a professional office under SD2. After applying for the office, after occupying the office, we have tried to build and applied to build rentals on the vacant lot number 6. The lot measures 60 feet by 210, which is long and narrow. The restrictive setbacks of 25 feet and 45 feet took up 63% of the 12,600 square foot lot. This made our lot number 6 not buildable. And just like the DNRC lot across the street, both lots have been de facto open space for 20 years. As private citizens, my wife and I do not have the DNRC mission, which was stated in the rezone document, which is to get a good financial return on the property to benefit Montana schools. However, as private citizens, landlords, and small business, we are part of the fabric of this community. As landlords, we bought other rentals, we improved them, providing affordable housing in the context of Missoula's undersupplied rental market. The insurance office provides good paying jobs and benefits for 2 working moms, with compensation nicely above the median wages in Missoula. We are civic-minded citizens. Amy and I have volunteered many hours supporting nonprofits and charitable organizations. We donate financial support also. And finally, we pay taxes. This year, a total city-county property tax in the amount of $16,489, of which $2,420 is on this vacant, non-buildable lot which we own. We are troubled that since this is a council-initiated rezoning, fees would not be collected, staff time absorbed by development services. If we proposed such a change to our properties, it would be at our own risk and at our private expense. So while supporting this single parcel rezone tonight, I am here asking the council to move forward and update the entire SD2 zoning. When I made similar remarks to the Planning Committee on October 4th, committee members Improta, Erickson, and Ainsworth agreed with the idea of updating SD2 to more current standards. No committee members voiced disagreement. So in conclusion, I am here asking what all citizens of any government ask under the law, which is simply fair and equal treatment under that law. Over the years, the Council has been unwavering in its advocacy for fair and equal treatment under the law. This has been true throughout, without regard to gender, race, family, status, religion, or national origin. Tonight, I am asking the Council to take that future initiative and look at replacing the current zoning and provide for more modern and functional standards, making SD2 zoning more consistent and more fair, but also to do this without regard to the ownership of the property, whether it is a private citizen or a government entity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Koski. Additional public comment? No more public comment? All right. I'm going to close the hearing and ask if there are questions from council. Mr. Wells.
I got 2, but I guess the first one will be for city staff. The gentleman's comments brought up a good question. Does this zoning process go through without any fees to the DNRC for the rezone?
That's correct. It's Mary McCrae with Development Services. If it's a city council initiated zoning, there are no fees.
Sure, follow up.
And this one will actually be for the DNRC spokesperson. Could you repeat what the lease was? How much a year?
The annual lease is $26,480 with a 2% escalator for 15 years. And 80.
Ms. Karras and then Ms. Bentley. Okay, Ms. Bentley.
I was just going to answer the first question for folks that aren't on the committee in terms of the rezone. The reason that Marilyn Marler and I brought this forward to council was to use it as a beta test for the entire SD2 zone. So we thought it was government to government and that it would be a good beta test. Seems like there's a willingness to go that route. So that was part of the plan.
Ms. Karras.
Ms. McCrae, I had a question. Slide 11 shows the site plan, and I can't find in Sire any similar map. Is there one? This is two questions. First is that map anywhere on SIRE, that site map?
Let me just pull this up real quick so I make sure I'm looking at the same thing. This was part of the package when on June 27th with the referral for the City Council initiated rezoning. So it should have been attached to that referral.
Okay, I'll look back then. My other question is in regard to your comments about landscaping. I'm kind of confused. Point 53, you say that the SD2 absolute landscaping standards are less specific than the Title 20 standards, and the SD2 relative landscaping standards, such as buffering between commercial and residential uses, are encouraged but not required. Could you just clarify do you know what amount of landscape buffering there will be on Reserve Street?
City SD2 requires 25 feet of landscaping from along the street frontages, so that'd be both South 7th Street West and Reserve Street. So, but in terms of landscaping and buffering between a commercial use and residential, adjacent residential, it's sort of a relative standard. So the applicant can choose that to get to their number of points, but they don't have to. They can do other things. So maybe they won't buffer between a commercial use and a residential use. The other thing is with the 45-foot setback on Reserve Street, and you have 25 feet of landscaping, that leaves 20 feet, which people typically put their parking in because they can't put a building in that 20 feet. They have a 45-foot setback. And that's how the parking lots end up, in front of the building, pushing the commercial structures closer to the residential. So having a relative standard rather than an absolute standard in SD2 that requires buffering and landscaping adjacent, to residential when you're adjacent is not really effective for that residential.
Okay.
Mr. Wilkins?
So I guess I was wondering, across the street, the gentleman that spoke, and wouldn't that be keeping the area under the same type zoning instead of having different zones right across the street? And could that be initiated by the City Council too?
City Council could make that choice to initiate zoning for another property. I think the bigger project is going to look at the whole of SD2, and there might be a variety of zoning districts that would be appropriate, not just the B22. There have been, with the new Title 20 update, there's a new zoning district that's not applied anywhere on the land, and I believe that's a B3. That might be appropriate. So there might be other zoning districts that also be appropriate.
Well, so is there more property that could be zoned this new zoning, so it all conforms together?
Yeah, I think the general plan is that if SD2 is outdated, perhaps council should look at all of SD2 and propose to rezone, city-initiated rezoning of the rest of SD2 to a variety of zoning districts, depending what's appropriate and what's adjacent to it.
All right, thank you.
Ms. West?
So I think we'll see the site plan again when it comes through conditional review, right? But I had a question about changing the access. So with the access being on the other parcel, does that make the parking lot larger, or is there going to be more green space preserved overall?
Mary McCrae with Development Services. Since MDT has control of where driveway approaches are in Reserve Street, it'll be located farther south on the other property, and they'll share that access. There'll be a cross-access easement for both properties.
Mr. Wells?
Sorry, one last quick question. Just for curiosity's sakes, if the DNRC had been charged for this zoning change, what's a guesstimate of how much it would have cost them to go through this process?
Let me just, one second. I just don't commit those things to memory any longer because they change. And I happen to have the fees here. So a zoning map amendment up to and equal to an acre is $3,157. A zoning map amendment greater than an acre is $4,868.
So to clarify, basically, we, in the interest of interagency cooperation and to beta test this, they saved about $4,800.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any additional questions? Ms. Bentley?
I move that we adopt an ordinance to rezone property located at 905 Reserve Street, legally described as Parcel A of Certificate of Survey number 4743 in the northeast quarter of Section 30, Township 13 North, Range 19 West, Principal Meridian, Montana, from Special District Number 2, SC2, to B2-2 Community Business, based on the findings of fact in the staff report.
Thanks. Your motion's in order. Do we have discussion? Oh, do you want to speak to the motion, Ms. Bentley?
I wanted to thank Mary for her hard work and Marilyn for bringing this forward and the DNRC. I think it's a really good project for this site. I think it's going to be really nice, and I'm glad that we had this opportunity to shed some light on how dysfunctional the SD2 has been. I think SIR B3 is that we're creating during our should be done in the next few months or month. Might be a really good fit for the rest of SD2. It has even more flexibility than the conditional use process that these folks are going to go through. And I think, this whole area has a lot of potential for some really nice sort of artisan businesses like Hunter Bay, and I'm in support of moving forward on this.
Mr. DeBari.
So like Ms. Bentley, I also support this. As Ms. McCrae had mentioned, SD2 uses don't really match what's happening along the Reserve Street corridor and how that development has changed over time. I think this rezoning permits a development type and urban form pattern that is consistent with Title 20 and is moving in the direction that I think we would like to see the community be moving. And as Mr. Koski had mentioned, and the planning board and Ms. Bentley, I also look forward to considering zoning options for other land that is currently zoned SD2, and I think we're going to have some good options for that.
Mr. Wilkins?
Well, and I support this also, and I'm glad to hear that we might start doing something with the other land around there and get it rezoned, so I'm looking forward to that talk.
Mr. Wells?
I pretty much echo everybody else what they're saying. I can see the Pandora's box that it opened up by giving one government agency a certain amount of flexibility here, but I think the overall end result for the entire area is going to be very beneficial. I know that other government agencies don't necessarily get the same flexibility.
At the end, I support it.
So, while I definitely empathize with your concern, I'm going to support this.
All right. Is there any additional public comment? Or I'm just using random words tonight. Is there any more city council discussion? Okay, I'll go. I was one of the sponsors of this, and I want to thank staff for working on it. And Mr. Koski, am I saying that right? Koski.
Thank you.
I am really glad that you came down to voice your support and your desire for more of this kind of zoning. And that is what we wanted to start to move into this with the beta testing. because several people involved in this project and I, who live near here, when you start to look at the SD2 zoning, it doesn't seem modern or helpful, and there could be so much potential for that part of town, but it's not really, we can't just go in and start rezoning people's property without there being a public process. And this one, because it was a state agency that is in the interest of the school trusts, they have the explicit goal of raising money for the schools. It seemed like a good test case to start this, and I'm very pleased to hear that Planning Board was in support of doing more of the zoning, and that neighboring landowners would also be interested in this type of zoning. That's exactly the kind of feedback. What could have happened is a lot of people come out and said, we absolutely don't want that. We think it's great the way that it is now, but it seems like the zoning has been stifling potential development. And thank you for everyone being involved, and we'll see what happens going forward. We can do city council initiated zoning if we need to. I'm getting a little afield of this proposal, so I'll stop talking there. I'm just happy that this process has happened. And I think we're ready to vote, having had a public hearing and a discussion. Let's vote on the motion.
Okay, this is on the ordinance rezoning the property. Motion to approve. Cares. Cares votes yes. Dubari votes yes. Hedall votes yes. Hess votes yes. Jones votes yes. Marler votes yes. Van Lossberg votes yes. Wells votes yes. West votes yes. Wilkins votes yes. Armstrong votes yes. And Bentley votes yes. And any of you like to change your vote? That's 12 ayes.
All right, thank you. Let's go to general comments of City Council, starting with Ms. Hedall, Mr. Van Lossberg, Ms. Bentley, Ms. Cares. Oh, Ms. Cares, did you say? No. Okay, Ms. West, go ahead.
So there's a leadership team meeting of the North Side, West Side Neighborhood Council tomorrow night at 6 at the Bistro, and then the following day we will be doing our neighborhood walk around for the Invest Health grant, starting at 5:30 and ending at 7:30, both starting and ending at the Bistro.
Mr. Wilkins?
So on November 11th is Veterans Day, and as I've been doing the last few years, I'm collecting socks for Valor House. And the reason Valor House is because they take our homeless veterans in, they train them and try to meet their needs that they might have to be able to come back into the community, and it's important. So please donate your socks, new socks, for Valor House. Thanks.
Mr. Hess?
Thanks. I had the pleasure of touring the Missoula County Election Center today and learning about a lot of their processes, and I'm happy to report that the Elections Office employs the most tedious, duplicative, onerous processes to ensure the fairness of our elections. And it was really impressive. I think that it would be very, very difficult. I know that I'm 100% confident in the fairness of our elections after that tour. And I know that with a lot of the media going on right now, that's something that it doesn't hurt to take a little bit of time to reassure people about. Rebecca Connors and her team go to the greatest lengths to ensure that fairness, and through a variety of internal controls that are, as I said, at the best tedious and mundane, and that's all for the good of our elections. So thanks to them for the good work, and I hope that everyone has some appreciation for all the work that goes into keeping our elections fair.
Ms. Armstrong? Mr. Dubari?
So as most people know, general hunting season opened on Saturday, and just wish everyone a safe, ethical, and successful season.
Ms. Jones? Mr. Wells?
With this strange time of year and before the daylight savings, be careful driving to work. I have never had such a close call with deer as I did the other morning, and just be safe.
Okay. I don't think that we have any committee reports unless I'm missing them, and I haven't been totally on my game, so maybe. And we don't have any new business. Are there any items to be referred that aren't on this list? Okay. Miscellaneous communications, petitions, reports, and announcements. We have the publication of the administratively approved agreements, which was on SIRE. So we don't have to take action on that. Oh, there aren't any to report. Hello. Why don't we just adjourn? Good night.